Captain's Log, Stardate 1992. Flight recordings are being sent to us by three important space vessels: the Liberator, the TARDIS, and Red Dwarf.
It hasn't worked.
What happened?
Well, Lister altered the timelines.
Give me the Star Trek wacko jacko.
Where is it?
I lost it.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Think of something.
I'm thinking.
Perhaps we could try a mind swap.
Captain's Log Supplemental. I've agreed to the loan of my first officer's holographic mind print.
Well, it'll take a few seconds for the timelines to sort themselves out, and then we'll see if it's worked.
BBC Video have boldly brought us Doctor Who, Blake 7, and Red Dwarf.
Well done, Mr. Spock.
And welcome to From the Archive, a British television vlog. My name is Greg Bakken. I've been a fan of Red Dwarf for a while, but it hadn't always been that way. In fact, when it started, I was not a fan of the series at all. I was, in fact, very much against it. Being an American and getting the episodes, via the way that a lot of tape traders got it, through friends of friends in UK, bringing it over. We were able to see Red Dwarf, at least the first series, not too long after it had its first run on BBC Two. I wasn't a big fan of it. It wasn't that I didn't get it or anything, I just didn't really care for it all that much. It also didn't help that I had a friend, an acquaintance in fandom, who actually was the one that got the tapes over, and he was such a fan of it. He just loved it and loved it and loved it, to the point that it just turned me off on the series. I absolutely couldn't stand it, because he would keep quoting it. And another thing that he would quote, which has to this day ruined for me, is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He would quote Bill and Ted's over and over. I mean, that's the way that he would come up to you and talk to you. It's like, it just was too much for me, and I just could not stand it. Then jump forward a number of years, and a different friend of mine gave me a tape of Series 5 of Red Dwarf, not too long after it aired on BBC Two. And at that point I decided, okay, I'll give it a shot. I'll see what happens. I'll see what it's all about. Because I knew the premise. It wasn't like that I'm starting fresh from it and I wouldn't know anything about it at all. I knew a great deal about the series. I just didn't really care for it all that much. And then I started with the episode titled Hologram. And I absolutely loved it. I found the type of humor very up the same vein of humor that I like. And there was something really good about it, and it's a little bit more polished than the first series was. Now, I know that a lot of you out there's certainly fans of the series who think that Series 1 and 2 are the best of the entire run, and that's fine. That's totally fine if that's what you think, but I actually prefer Red Dwarf from Series 3 onwards, with some massive exceptions. But the first two series, they're very good. Series 2 is really good. Series 1, for me, took a little while to get going. Once again, I'm just different than everyone else, I guess. But the thing was that once I got into Series 3 in particular, I loved it. And I just wanted to keep watching more and more and more of it. Really, after I saw Series 5, of course. After I saw Series 5, I went back and started rewatching the show. But for me, Holly is, for me, definitive by Hattie, not so much Norman. And I know that that's blasphemy, but I really thought that Hattie as Holly, too many H's, quite frankly, Hattie as Holly brought a different dynamic to the entire cast because she was the only female. Even though she was playing a computer, it still, to me, brought a very different dynamic to it, which I really enjoyed. And I really wish that she would have a chance to come back. I know everyone's fan favorite is Norman, and I can see why. But at the same time, to me, that's my era of Red Dwarf, because I started to really get into it much later than everybody else. And of course, the only exception to really any Red Dwarf for me, because I'm a pretty big fan of the series. I really do enjoy it. It has its ups and downs, but to me, the nadir of the entire run is Back to Earth. I really have a tough time with that. I've watched it a couple times just to kind of get myself, like, give it another chance, see what else I can be done with it. And boy, I just don't see it. I just have a real tough time with it. And I know that there's some people who do like it, and that is quite all right. For me, though, I don't see it. Whatever. So what are we talking about today? Well, I am talking about the Blu-ray release of the most recent Red Dwarf. Well, it's kind of a movie, isn't it? It's called The Promised Land. And normally, what I like to do is I like to talk about more of the archive television sort of releases, because a lot of times you can take the releases and compare it from the old releases to the new releases, which is something I really enjoy doing. With this, though, to me, Red Dwarf is still, it's basically archive television. It's, but they're making new episodes. It's kind of the same with Doctor Who. They're making new episodes. And so I figured, what, I could talk about this release. And if you're one of those people who are just like, I prefer it when you talk about stuff that was made in the 60s, that is not a problem. I will be making more of these with programs made in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s. We have a lineup of programs that I want, releases that I want to talk about. I can't get away without talking and trying to make some comparison. So I am also going to be talking very little bit about this release also, but we'll get to that in a second. This is the release to the Blu-ray to the most recent Red Dwarf special. I've heard like Robert Llewellyn call this Series 13. I don't know if he still does so. I look at it as a one-off special. Basically, in October of 2019, UK TV had announced that they were going to be doing a 90-minute feature-length story for Red Dwarf, not a new series, and I think that's very interesting. I think it's going to play very deeply into the series, into the world of Red Dwarf going forward. I think that this film is a changing point for how Red Dwarf is made going forward. This was going to be shot, I think, in November of 2019, which I believe it was, November, December. What's really interesting about it is by the time it got out, a couple things had happened. For promotion of the film, Chris Berry, Danny John Jules, Robert Llewellyn, Craig Charles, they made the cover of SFX magazine. This was for the April issue, and they had really quite the amazing roundup of this new special. And I pointed out because if you get a chance to get your hands on it, really take a look. They have a lot of concept art to it. They also have a great deal of information about the series. They have this interesting timeline of the entire run in terms of where things are, how it all works, and quite frankly, it's a very nice piece. It's a very, the issue itself, as the issue of SFX, I think it was a double issue because of it. There is so much Red Dwarf in it, and I really am excited by the fact that a show that had been around for so many years, by that point it was 32 years, now we're heading to 33, that it still is garnering such excitement because, as we're going to get to in the review, you're not seeing a whole lot of difference in the series. I don't think, because the quality is there. There's some exceptions, but this is what is really exciting about the stuff that's being made, and it's really exciting too that although the BBC doesn't want to make it anymore and doesn't want to run it on their channels, and quite frankly, I'd find it very hard to see it running on BBC One or BBC Two. Something like Dave, the network called Dave, decided to run it and pick it up, and I think has been a really good success for him, especially this. And we'll get to that in a second. But the Radio Times did do some promotion for it, calling it the Comedy of the Week, which is really kind of cool. And it did give it, a little bit of press. It gave it one article, and it gave a couple those little call-out boxes. The episode itself aired on Dave on April 9th, and it's really interesting because I was in the UK, but I was able to watch it live. And it was a really interesting experience to do so. I think it was 3 p.m. my time that I sat and I watched it. And watching brand new Red Dwarf was really quite the incredible experience. Mainly because it was like, wow, this is a new Red Dwarf. But at the same time, it was also kind of like, look at all these commercials. You don't see the commercials. And quite honestly, when it was running on the BBC, it obviously didn't have commercials. And by the time we would normally get it, like when I'm getting these later series of Red Dwarf, it's already on home media. So I'm not getting the commercials. And boy, there's a lot of commercials to it. And I guess, quite frankly, if it means that it stays on the air, that they need the advertisers and they're filling the spaces, then I guess that's fine. I'm going to talk a little bit about the plot. And when I make this, I'm going to put in a description where I start talking about the plot and where I end talking about the plot, because I'm not going to do a spoiler review, but I don't want to ruin it for anyone, because I don't know, like, for example, I know Red Dwarf has a big a fan base in America, and to my knowledge, it hasn't run there yet. I certainly know that this release isn't over there yet, so for those who are collecting the US releases. So I just want to make sure I don't ruin anything for anybody. But basically, for the most part, did I like the episode? Did I like the story itself? And I would say yes, I did. There's some things in there that I found kind of tiresome. First of all, when the main cast is not on camera, the first thing I'm always asking is, where is the main cast? Because they're so powerful together, and they're so good, and they're written very well, that they've been doing it for so long that it's extremely polished, and it's so much fun to watch them, that when I'm not seeing them, I really wonder what's happening. That's why you have to have a cast, for everyone else being cast, maybe not on an equal level, because I don't think these have a lot of money put to them, but it, as far as they're trying to make it work on a very meager budget. But you need somebody. And in the case in point, first of all, the story is about, kind of goes back to the time of the first series of Red Dwarf, when we realize, after Lister and Rimmer had encountered the cat for the first time, that Lister was a bit of a god. Not a bit of a god. He was a god to the feral cat people. And there was a whole civilization on Red Dwarf for millions of years, and they evolved from Frankenstein being Lister's cat to the cat, but there is a whole race of it, and they all left, apart from the high priest or whomever it was. After all this time, we get to see that cat race, and that's to me a very interesting concept. But what I found very unfortunate, and maybe you all have a different take on it, was that the cat didn't really interact in a very meaningful way with his cat people, his fellow people. Part of it, you might say, well, he's a cat, and cats don't really, they only care about themselves, which is true. But to me, there was such a lack of reaction between cat and the cat people. It almost didn't seem like that they were anything near the same race. And seeing how, sex-hungry cat is, you would think that he would have wanted to try to mate or something with not necessarily the people who were the cat people in the episode, but ask about it or something. I don't know. I mean, there was an episode in the last series that he was going to mate with a cat person. It turned out to be a polymorph. But that's the thing, though, is where was that dynamic? I really wanted to see something like that. The king of the feral cats was really interesting, Rodon. because, and this is not meant to be a disparagement of the actor, but I really did not think he was strong enough for that role. And once again, at the risk of being, rude to somebody who puts, a lot of their energy and their life into their performances, it just didn't seem like an equal match. I think I needed someone a little bit stronger to play that role. And there's a big spoiler at the end. I won't go into it about the significance of Rodan, but it goes back to earlier comments that I'm making, that it just doesn't seem to tie things together nearly as much. And it's one of those things that you only have 90 minutes to do so. So part of me is like, well, how are they going to fit everything in? Yet at the same time, I thought there was a great deal of padding in the episode itself. I thought that there's a lot of things that really took a long time to get moving. But some of it was also good, like the reboot of Holly. That stuff took a great deal of time, but at the same time, it was worth it. There's other things that didn't quite, in my mind, work as well. And, I don't want to say that Doug Naylor doesn't know what he's doing, because he's extremely successful and he could do a lot better job than I ever could possibly imagine. But at the same time, I also wonder if when he's given another opportunity. It's not if, it's when. This did very well for Dave. When he's given another opportunity to do a special, if he's going to kind of figure out the rhythm of the plot a little bit more, because he's not doing 6 25-minute episodes. He's going to be doing like one 90-minute piece, and that changes the dynamic obviously quite a bit. One of the things that really kind of got old to me immediately, and I think that you all would see it differently. I could sometimes be a grouch about this kind of stuff, so forgive me, but there's a lot of cat jokes in this story. And what I mean by cat jokes, it's like the doorway for them to get into Rodan's lair is like a cat flap. There's jokes about lasers being pointed and cats going at all and everything else. And for some reason, and maybe I just wasn't in a good mood when I watched it, so I thought, I'm like, this is not funny at all. And also it might have to do with the fact, first of all, I watched this about 3 times, and I've seen this now about 3 times. It's fine. But every time the cat jokes really fall flat for me, which is odd because I really enjoyed it when Cat was doing it, like in the first episode of Red Dwarf, and he, throughout the first couple of series, he's kind of accentuating some of those cat things and playing with the ball of string and the shiny stuff and everything else and trying to get the fish out of the aquarium. I thought all that stuff was really good. This did not work for me for some reason, and I think part of it might be too because it's like the lasers, the door, the scratching post, a couple other things. Part of it to me too is like at the beginning, I don't think it's sold that well by the actors doing it, in my opinion, the cat jokes, but also the audience are literally pissing themselves with laughter, and it's like, what are you laughing at? It's not that funny. And maybe, because once again, I'm a grouch, maybe that was just me being silly. And I have a cat here, so I can see the cat playing around, and doing all that same stuff, and it seems been a better value for my money. But at the same time, this didn't really do it for me in terms of that part of it. Sometimes I wonder if I've been robbed of the gift of laughter, because I know a lot of people find that stuff funny. I've talked about stuff I didn't like about the story, but honestly, I thought overall it was really pretty good. For example, the sets for everything to do with it. If you got that SFX magazine, you're going to find that they talk a great deal about the sets and stuff, and it's really interesting and really cool how much they actually built for it. It looks beautiful. In fact, I think from Series 11 onward that they switched production company to Baby Cow, and to me, the change has been enormous. I've always thought since Series 3 of Red Dwarf that they've done a really good job of keeping the quality of the effects pretty good. But when you got to Series 10, which I still thought looked good, and also I took into account the fact that they didn't have a lot of money, I get to series 11, and I don't know about you, but for me, it just blew me away. I just thought this was absolutely amazing in terms of the sets and the special effects, and I thought the stories are really good too. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot that is picked up in there that is really, really good and looks great. You know, and what I also really like about especially this episode of Red Dwarf is that Doug Naylor is not hiding the fact that these characters are now old, okay? He is not hiding the fact that it has been 30-some years since Lister came out of stasis. And that, to me, is extremely important because it really shows that time has passed and that they're getting weird. You know, Lister, he is now scavenging on other decks, and he has a ton of crap that he has brought back up to his room, and you know, it makes no sense. He's become kind of weird, and he's drinking, and it's certainly not like a special episode of Red Dwarf where Lister has a problem, but it is hinted at, I think, quite heavily that the effects of him being the last human and everything going on is weighing on him. And also that Crichton, if you look at Crichton's costume, it's all like, it's kind of smashed up, it's broken in places, like his little screen, it's cracked. And it's not because they've been using the same costume for 30 years. It's because they're making a note that he's on his last legs as a character. I mean, he's been running continuously for years and years and years and years. And it's a really interesting thing. It's like, how do you show an android getting old? And I think that's it. All of the characters look older, but not in a bad way. And I think that they've held up very well, all of them. It's just that they're not hiding behind that, and I find that refreshing. Incidentally, I don't know if you saw this, and I wonder if it's the case, when Lister is putting all that stuff in his room, there is a skeleton with a wig on it, and I'm wondering if that's a callback to where they found Crichton way back in Series 2 on Nova 5, and that's one of the original crew members, because remember, Crichton didn't realize that they were all dead, and he'd been serving them and giving them food for years.
Listen, girls, I don't know whether it's the time or place to say this, but my mate Ace here is incredibly brave.
When you're playing the same characters for so many years, you're allowed to have certain moments, I think, and play them well. And there is a moment, and once again, I'm not going to give it away. For those of you who know and have watched it, you'll know what I'm talking about, that there's a kind of a dire moment, and Rimmer isn't exactly sure what to do, and he has a decision to make. And he has this, it's a two-hander scene, basically, between Rimmer and Lister. And it stops becoming a comedy, and it becomes something between, even though they've ripped on each other and done nasty things to each other for all these years, that there is actually friendship there. And I've said this before about other shows, and you can only do a scene like that, and really, really deliver it well, if you've had that experience between the two of them, and really, an experience being just working together for all these years. And I think that is how you end up with this amazing moment, and it's one of my favorite moments. It's certainly my favorite moment in the episode. It might be one of my top moments in all of Red Dwarf, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful moment that can only be done when you have that history built between not only the characters but the actors also. It reminds me of my favorite scene in Star Trek VI. No, that's from Star Trek V. We don't talk about that scene. No, the scene from Star Trek VI between Kirk and Spock. And to me, because Undiscovered Country is, to me, such a pivotal film, this is the defining moment, I think, between two friends.
Is it possible that we two, you and I, have grown so old and so inflexible that we have outlived our usefulness? would that constitute a joke?
Don't crucify yourself. It wasn't your fault.
I was responsible.
For no actions but your own.
All right, now what I like to do in these is I like to go back to previous versions and like compare between this and whatever the version was before. But this is brand new, so I'm going to break protocol, if I may, for a second, and not get too deep into it. But I do want to make a comparison of sorts, and I do want to quickly talk, and I mean very quickly, about this release, which is the Blu-ray release of, do we call this the classic series of Red Dwarf? We can certainly call it the BBC era of Red Dwarf. This is series 1 through 8, and it was all created in SD, broadcast in SD on BBC Two. But this is, and I think it would have broadcast between 1987 and 1999, and just recently, within the last year or so, they've released all these on Blu-ray, which is up-resing the standard def recordings to HD and putting them out, just like we are doing for Doctor Who, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Faulty Towers, and some other ones. Neverwhere comes to mind also. And I was really not wanting to get this because you put money into a set of DVDs, and I don't watch Red Dwarf that often. And I have the DVDs that were released back in the early 2000s. And also found out that at one point there was a fault with the Blu-ray set. Now, I also understood that this Blu-ray set, Amazon had fixed versions of it, and that made me decide I want to get this. It also made me decide to do it because as much as I enjoy these DVDs of Red Dwarf, they cram so much stuff in this, and you're going to be like, well, why is that a problem? It's not a problem. But when you're watching this on standard def, these episodes, they look great. When you're watching them in HD, you could really see the artifacting because the episodes have low bit rate. Because they put so much good stuff into it, and they only had 2 discs to do it, that you had to make compromises. And so some of these are really hard to watch. And that's what I really want to do. I just want to make one comparison, or a couple comparisons. And you let me know, okay? You let me know if you think that you want to see me do a video covering the entire box set of Red Dwarf on Blu-ray, okay? Because if you want me to do so, I will certainly consider doing so. But what I want to do is I want to do a comparison between Series 7, Episode 1, Ticket to Ride, on DVD and on Blu-ray. And the reason why I bring it up because there is a couple versions of Ticket to Ride on the DVD and also on the Blu-ray. But the encoding on this has never looked good. And so if you're a fan of Red Dwarf, if you're a really big fan of Red Dwarf and you haven't bought the Blu-rays, and not because you don't have an HD set, because if you don't, then that's totally understandable, but because you're just like me, I already bought this, how many times do I need to buy Red Dwarf? I bought most of them on VHS, and where has that gotten me? I want you to see between the DVD and the Blu-ray of some scenes from Ticket to Ride, and then you decide whether or not that's something you might actually want to be interested in. Now, I also understand that not everyone is a picture snob like myself. I really am. If I know that something is coming out and I already own it, but it's going to improve the picture quality, even when I say I don't want to get it, I probably at some point will get it. And the problem is you got to be careful because you don't want to do it too late, because sometimes the release disappears. I've been doing some work backing up some of my materials, and part of it is for me grabbing covers, from Amazon, just images of covers for different things, just to put into my, my folders and stuff. As collectors, we do weird things. And some of that stuff, and I'm not talking about this, but I'm talking about other releases, and I'm talking certainly about some network releases. I can't find them on Amazon. I can't find them on network. They're out of print. And that's the thing kind of why I end up getting this stuff as soon as they come out, because I'm afraid it's going to go out of print. I mean, look at the Doctor Who releases. They last not very long, and of course with season 14. With season 14, with the COVID stuff, it really made things difficult for a lot of people, and luckily the BBC was just like, we understand what's happening, we're going to fix it, this is what we're going to do. So thank you to the BBC for doing that. I didn't need to take advantage of it, but if anything stops scalpers, people who want to make a profit at these for charging huge amounts of money, and I know it's the people buying it that keeps it going, but still it's unnecessary, right? Let's talk about The Promised Land, okay, which it's a 1-disc release. Basically, because this was recorded in 2019, probably post-work done in 2020, broadcast in 2020, this thing looks very, very good. Of course it should. It better look good. It's HD. It broadcasts on an HD station. This is 21st century television. It better look good. It's clean video, good sound. I mean, the effects look really good. Everything has a really nice, sharp image to it. And that is, what you expect to find from something like this. And I know that it's kind of like, well, of course it's going to look good. What are you talking about? But sometimes things get botched up, don't they? And you never know what's going to happen. So yes, this is looking amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, as far as extras are concerned, first of all, you get the entire, film. You damn well better, right? Then you get a documentary. You get one of two documentaries, actually. It's called The Promised Doc, the first one. And then the second one is called Through the Audience's Eyes. And then you have The Promised Land Smeg-ups, which I just smegged up. And then you have some deleted scenes. Just to talk about the documentaries. First of all, any Red Dwarf release seems to have pretty decent extras to it. Whether or not it's the classic ones that have a lot of the historical stuff, as well as having a lot of good pieces from the archive and some documentaries and stuff, that's always really good. The more current releases, at the very least, they're going to have documentaries on the making of the program. And that's what we have here. We have the documentary of the making of The Promised Land. It's broken up into two pieces. They're listed as two separate documentaries, but I can see them easily being as one. The first one is mainly talking about with the cast, really talking with the principals. And getting their feeling about coming back and doing it again, and what's it like working together and everything else. And one of the tidbits in there that I found very interesting was that Robert Llewellyn was pretty ill through some of the filming, so they had to kind of rework the schedule for shooting and whatnot, and he got better and he came back. Same thing I think happened to Craig Charles for Series 10, if I'm not mistaken, that he had to go away, he had to be away for some of it because he had the flu. The thing about this, though, is that the focus for the Promised Doc is really on the main cast members, and they barely talk to any of the guest casts, which I think it's unfortunate, because I think it's really worthwhile talking with them about what's it like to be on Red Dwarf. I think at least two of them, if not more, I don't think were born when Red Dwarf started. So it's kind of this interesting question about what's it like and how does it feel to be, on it, and fair enough. They might just be like, well, it's a job. Who cares? But I think that there's a little bit more to it than that. I really do. The second one is like Through the Audience's Eyes, and why I think this is interesting is because it moves from the people, the cast, to the technical side of it, talking about the sets, talking about the cameras, talking about logistics of being in the studio and how they shot it, because it's not shot like the standard episodes would be. It's not like one, scene after another, trying to be as close to order as possible because it's a sitcom. This was shot, in some cases, single camera, I think in most cases single camera, and then broken up, not in order, over the course of a certain amount of time, where they would actually have to show the different audiences, because it's more than one audience coming in there, show them what they've seen so far, what they're about, what came before the scene that they're going to shoot, because then it gave them some kind of understanding of what they're laughing about. And I think it's difficult enough to shoot a film, but to shoot a sitcom film in front of a live audience, I think that's pretty exciting, and I think that's pretty awesome, to be honest. And it feels like they did a great job with it. And they show the audience, it's just a massive amount of people, and that just goes to show that they really filled it up, and it has a lot of people. The energy of when you're watching the show is really fun because people are very excited about it. Yes, I joke about the fact that people are overly excited about the cat jokes, but it is really good energy, and you can see behind the scenes because in some cases the cast is sitting at the front of the audience because they're also seeing what's happening before they start their scene or whatever, and they're enjoying it just as much as everyone else. It seems like a really good experience. Those two documentaries are very good, and Smeg Ups and the deleted scenes, they're good too. They are what you expect them to be. And we are very well aware of what the Smeg Ups were for many, many years. There's actually, certain releases of them, and they're on here and all that. So, it's good to see that they're there, and they're actually really funny. It's good. It's a nice little package of extras. What would I like to have seen? Well, where's our trailers? There were trailers that were made, actually a special trailer that was made. It didn't have like a whole lot to it, but why isn't it on here? Is there? I don't know if there was specially produced music here, or if they're all cues from the original series. But a music only track might not be too bad. But it is, any of the promotional stuff I think a lot of us would like to see, because I'm hoping never to buy this again, quite frankly, and you just don't want to have to be enticed with it for some other reason. Though I would expect at some point there will be like a set of here's all the post BBC stuff, here's the Dave era in one big box set. Who knows what that's all about. Now I know a lot of you don't, well, I don't know if a lot of you, now I know some of you may not care too much about it, but as I always say, I'm a big fan of the covers. I always want the cover to be interesting, exciting. Part of it is I'd love it if the people are in the store, remember those? They come into the store and they are really excited by this and they see it. So, I do rate the covers. It's all part of the experience for me. And I really like this cover. It's like the episode itself. It's epic. There is this epic feel to this story. And what I really think is interesting too is if you look at the Red Dwarf logo here, even that's not pristine. Even that looks like it's made of metal, but it's chuffed and it's kind of falling apart. And it's such a subtle piece to it that everyone is older. It doesn't come across as Red Dwarf the ship is falling apart, but the people in it are. And it's an interesting look and a kind of a fresh perspective, because it doesn't need to be about trying to pretend that these people are the same age and whatnot. It kind of reminds me a bit of Only Fools and Horses, where they kept dyeing Delroy's hair because David Jason lost the color in his hair years ago, and they're trying to make him look young. It's don't bother. We love the character. Don't worry about it. They're here. They're not making too big of a deal of it. The only thing I am happy about is that now Chris Berry really shaves his head or cuts it very close. So I'm glad to give him a wig, because it would look really weird if they just allowed him out there just to how he looks now with an H on his head. It just wouldn't work. So I appreciate that very much. And of course, I do like the O-rings. I do like them. They're fun. I like putting them on. I know other people, some actually might just throw them away. Quite honestly, if you throw them away, put them on eBay. I bet someone will buy it. I really do. And that someone would probably be me. And then, of course, no booklet or anything, no insert. It's just this bare bones, which, what are you going to put in there, right? Though, any sort of making of in text might be kind of nice, but, it's just one disc, and it's good. Now, as far as technical aspects to it, this is a pretty straightforward release. I see this as a region-free disc. And what I say about that is because it is playing on my region-free player that's currently set to region A. You have, on mine at least, I have to switch them between A and B. So if it's a B only, it will not play currently on my player. Yet if it's an A, this is playing because it's region free. So that's pretty cool about that. And I bring it up because at least I haven't seen a North American release date for it yet. So it's region free. Audio is English DTS HD MA 5.1, which is standard basically for these type of HD releases, and it includes English subtitles. It's also on a Blu-ray 50, meaning it's a 50 gigabyte disc, so it's the largest Blu-ray. It's filled to capacity. That's always nice. If it had this film plus all the other extras, I'd be annoyed if it's like on a BD 25. So that's good. Overall, I think this is a good release. It got good treatment. It's a one-off. They had less to work with in some ways. So I find this to be kind of a interesting model now. And I do believe personally that this was a huge rating success for Dave. It did very well. I think they advertised it well, but I also think that people being in lockdown at the time, I think a lot of people were just really excited to watch something that was fun, and it came exactly at the right time, and that was exciting. What I think is going to happen is I don't think we'll ever see another series of Red Dwarf again, and I don't mean any episodes, but I mean as like 6 episodes as a series. I think going forward, my guess is that we're going to get movies. And whether it's like 2 movies a year or 1 movie every few years or whatever it is, I have a feeling this was such a success, and it probably is a little bit easier budget-wise because you're focusing everything on one long play opposed to 6 very individual things that you have to build new things for each week. That I wouldn't be surprised if the 6 episodes series are done in lieu of doing something more like this. It sounds like the cast of Red Dwarf is interested in doing more, but if you listen to the extras or watch the extras, and Robert Llewellyn in particular, who is the oldest and now is in his 60s, he's wearing this massive costume. I think he's getting tired of doing it in terms of the body's getting tired of doing it, and he makes comments alluding to that. So I have a feeling that, as long as he wants to do them, they'll keep making them. So hopefully they decide to do more soon, because that would be, very, very important. I can see myself rewatching this. It's very good. It looks beautiful, and I mean also from a production standpoint. And once again, I don't mean to dig, but I'd much grab this before Back to Earth, that's for sure. I can't stand that one. So overall, my rating is for this, I recommend this, but I recommend this, if you're a fan of Red Dwarf. I mean, it's not heavy with a lot of concepts that you have to have seen the series before for. I mean, yes, concepts that go back to series 1, but it's explained in a way that I don't think you need to have seen any other episode of Red Dwarf to really get the idea of it. I mean, I think when concepts come up, such as Holly and stuff, they explain it. But I feel like that, this is good to get if you have collected the others and you want to complete your collection. If you're not into the newer Red Dwarfs, then this one may not be right for you. But I'll tell you, it really is pretty good. I mean, you have the 4 characters, they're fantastic in it. They are fantastic in it. They, you kind of wonder, after doing it for so long, do they kind of start writing it in or whatever? No, they're all really good. And you got Holly in it too, which is exciting to see him in the show again. And he's really good, and they do kind of a different take on him also. So if you haven't seen it, I would go and check it out, because it is a very it's a lot of fun to watch, and I know a lot of people, a lot of fans are like, well, nothing's as good as the BBC era of Red Dwarf. Maybe. I think everything except for Back to Earth, when it came back from Series 10 onward, has been a stellar effort in my opinion. I think that they're really fun. And that's, kind of how I see it. Now, of course, it does beg the question is, when are we going to get that British Empire reunion? That is way overdue. And that is something I really, really want to watch. Now, for those of you who are interested in such things, I do a podcast. Well, I have done a podcast, the From the Archive, a British Television podcast. We haven't seen a new episode in a while, and quite frankly, I haven't had the thrill and the excitement to do so. But there's a lot of them that you can listen to. If you haven't listened before, please give it a listen. As soon as I get the desire to do more, I certainly will. And if you have ideas of what I could do for them, for those of you who know what my podcast is about, which is Archive British Television, send me some ideas. I'd be happy to look at them and see what you think. Also, there is, because I work with Kaleidoscope, and there is this wonderful piece of research called TV Brain, and you can go to TV Brain, and basically you're looking up, you think it might just be episode lists, but it's so much more to it. It tells you what format different shows are on. It's most of British television's history. It also gives you synopsises, either from TV Times or Radio Times. Not all of them are there yet, but that's something they're working on. Cast listing, air dates. I mean, it's an amazing piece, and you might be like, well, that's everywhere on the internet. This is different. TV Brain is different, and it also is going to be expanding more and more. It is a subscription, but it is certainly something for British television fans, archive British television fans, current British television fans. This is something you're interested in, check it out. You go to www.tvbrain.info and check it out. Honestly, it's worth your time. As far as getting a hold of me, send me an email. Give me some feedback on what you're seeing here. Be nice, of course. But send me, especially if there is a release, an archive release that has been out either a year or a couple years, whatever, and there's multiple versions or whatever, and you want me to do one of these episodes on them, there's a very good chance I have the release. Trust me. Reach out to me. Let me know. Or just give me any sort of feedback that you have on it. You can reach me at feedback@fromthearchive.co.uk. And then, of course, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, because I do different things. I do a live chat once in a while. I haven't done one of those in a while either, but we have a lot of fun when we do it. Last one we did, we brought on Richard Marson, and it was about being able to have someone who is well loved for his work on different British television pieces, Blue Peter, his work researching Upstairs Downstairs, and giving fans a chance to directly talk with them. And we'll be doing more stuff like that too down the line, and I'll be doing more of these type of videos looking at DVD and Blu-ray releases. I have a number of them that I am preparing to do. So please, if you're kind of annoyed I didn't do a true archive piece, there's certainly plenty coming up that I think you're going to enjoy also. Now, as far as this, I think we're good here. I think, if you want to check it out, I think it's highly, it's going to be a good time to do so. It's a lot of fun to watch. If not, if you kind of moved away from Red Dwarf, totally understand. But as for me, though, I'm going to put this where it belongs and back on its shelf.